Hi everyone, this is Olivia. Today we are going to talk about the rule of thirds. So by the time this video is over, you should have a good understanding and workable knowledge of the rule of thirds. So watch all the way to the end because there is quite a bit of information that will help you with this. And I also have an announcement to make that I will share with you towards the end of the video. Okay, so let's get started. The rule of thirds is easy to understand and simple. It is commonly used in all sorts of creative endeavors, from art to photography. And all this means is that you divide your image into 9 equal parts, 3 across, 3 down. So that means you'll have 9 little spaces, rectangles, squares, etc., and 1 in the very center. And it is that center one that you should avoid putting the main part of your image in. The focal point of your image should be in the outer sections of your composition. It can overlap into that center section. The reason for this is because if you have something totally centered, it is a little static. It doesn't provide as much interest or tension. I've talked about this without calling it the rule of thirds in previous videos, so some of you might already be familiar with this. What it does is when you put something off center, towards the side, up, down, left, right, but not centered, it creates a little bit of tension, and tension is not a negative thing. All it means is it adds more interest. So the viewer will be more engaged with your image. Now, having said that, I'm sure there are times when you might want something totally centered. An example when you might want something totally centered is if you're trying to create a very calming, peaceful image, like say one single tree in the very center of an image surrounded by a body of water. Then you would create this serene, calming effect, which is what being totally in the center does. But for the most part, you want something that is outside of that one center area. Okay? Okay. Possibly not every time, but almost all of the time, I am a fan of the rule of thirds. I have seen it in my own work many times where this really does apply. So now let's look at a few examples and we'll talk about those for just a little bit. But before we start, I wanted to briefly mention that the rule of thirds can be used as a rule of thumb. It is something that has been noticed by putting it into practice. So in that respect, yeah, awesome. However, don't base everything on this. You will need to ultimately decide whether you believe or want to put into use the rule of thirds all the time, sometimes, never. And I'm just trying to help you with a little bit of an understanding of this. Will make it a little easier for you to figure out what you want to put into practice. Okay, on to the examples. This first example, there are 2 different images, and both of them, the main focus is in the center of the image. I just thought I'd point them out to you so you don't have any questions. I don't think you would anyway, because this part is pretty simple. Those are both in the center, so they both are kind of static. Okay, moving on. This next image, this little teddy bear, she extends out, but she is in the center. So she is going to be still in the area where you probably shouldn't be. But this is an image where I think she could probably get by with it because she is very soft and gentle. Okay, the next image is of a scared little kitty cat tucked in his bed. Now on this image, I don't think he could get by with being in the center of the image because this one, you're supposed to pick up on a heightened emotion. The look on his face, he's scared, the shadow behind him, that sort of thing is supposed to evoke an emotion that you know he's afraid. So if he's put in the center, it would be too static. He needs to be somewhere else where he can help the viewer pick up on the tension. That's why he's at the bottom. He is still centered along the bottom of the image, but he is still outside of the taboo area, and it really does work for him. On this next image, it's in recognition of a mother. Take a look at where it sits inside of this rule of thirds. There is nothing in that center, so this complies quite well with the suggestion of the rule of thirds. She is totally along the left and the bottom. The bottom, I've put a little box with the little 9 squares, and you can see where I've marked in red where I feel the main focus is. And on this image, I felt it was along the left vertical and the bottom center. But if you wanted to, you could include the words, and if you did, then that would be kind of like a corner on the top right. The next image is the Dangles word imagine, and the main focal point of the image is all along the top. So it is successful, and I do believe on this one it really should be outside of the center. Its whole goal is to make you imagine, and the dangles, they're angled up. So you're supposed to have a certain sense of emotion, a happy emotion, but an emotion nonetheless. So that one works too. Now on to these last two, where both of them have the center as a part of where their focal point is. But before we get into that, I did want to bring up that I am taking this to what I'm going to call the extended, which is over on Patreon, and talk about it further. So if you would like to know more about the rule of thirds and how I feel about it, please come over to Patreon and check it out. Okay? Okay. Now to finish this up here, we'll look at the teddy bear first. The teddy bear complies with the rule of thirds. He takes up the bottom 4 sections of the image with a little bit of the 2 above it on the right side. So while the center is filled with him, that is not the main part of him. He himself takes up the right 2/3, not just basically in the center. So to me, he does okay. And I do think he is in the right place. Okay, now this image is of retro flowers, kind of the dandelions ready to blow in the wind. On this one, you can see where vertically, the top 2 on the far left and the bottom 2 in the center, where the focal point is. And so it isn't isolated in the center section. It is at a little bit of a diagonal, starting at the top left and going down to the bottom center. So it fits in with the rule of thirds. I hope that this video has helped you gain a better understanding of the rule of thirds. And over on Patreon, I'm going to share more of my opinions on the rule of thirds, because I have definite opinions. Some parts I agree with, some I don't. Overall, I do think I agree with it, but there are finer points to be taken into consideration. So, if you would like to know more, come on over to Patreon. I'd love to see you there. Thanks. Have a wonderful day. Much love, Olivia.